that Q&A. If there is time at the end of the meeting, I will ask, and maybe we can promote one or two persons to ask a question, but that is completely dependent on if we have enough time to get through this. So first we'll do all written questions. And again, I'm really focusing on Observatory Heights. You are the neighbors that we wanted to talk with tonight to really understand your issues and your concerns, our transitions to your neighborhood. So we hope to focus on those issues. So with that, I believe we're transitioning to the next slide. And I think I'm going to have Bonnie take it from here. And again, she and I will go back and forth on the land planning. So Bonnie, go right ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Marcus. And good to virtually see you all this evening. So just want to start quick with the parcel that we're focusing on today. So this is parcel B. You all are very familiar with this location, just south of 84th and west of Lowell. So from a process standpoint, this slide outlines the overall process for the entire Uplands community, going through the comp plan amendment, which happened this past February, the annexation preliminary development plan and master official development plan, which is ongoing right now. These two parcels shown in blue are specific to parcel B. So there's a small piece that's being annexed, and we're going through the preliminary development plan process, which establishes our overall zoning and development standards. We also just yesterday submitted a pre-application request to the city for the north parcel of parcel B. That will kick off initial review by the city, initial feedback and comments. So the plans that we are sharing with you today are consistent with the plans that we sent to the city yesterday. Following that pre-app submittal and meeting, we will move forward with site-specific official development plans and continued outreach with all of you. So just wanted to walk through where we are in the city process. And then comprehensive plan and preliminary development plan. So wanted to walk through the overall framework for these parcels. So to start with, we have the city's comprehensive plan. So this background image is the city's overall plan. These are the pieces that are specific to Uplands. Zooming in one step further, we are focused on parcel B. So this past February, we did a comp plan amendment for parcel B, both the north and south portions, to change it to an R5 designation. That allows a density of 5 homes per acre on each of the two parcels and allows uses such as single family detached and attached residences, duplexes, patio homes, townhomes, and condominiums. This plan is further refined with a preliminary development plan. So when we started looking at our preliminary development plan, we wanted to work from the outside in. So here on the eastern side of the parcel in this triangle, we have this green piece labeled BC, which is view corridor. That is an item that's identified in the comprehensive plan that makes sure that views within the city are preserved. So we worked with city staff to define what these boundaries would be. This is ultimately going to be dedicated to the city and will be free of development. We then looked at public land dedication. So again, land that is dedicated to the city. This is more likely to be more park oriented. So we have committed to a 3.7 acre PLD on the south and a 3 acre PLD on the north. Again, focusing on the high points of the site and getting these views across the site.
Great. Bonnie, if I could just clarify just the difference one more time between the view corridor and the PLD. What is the difference? They're both ultimately dedicated to the city, but how do they act differently?
Yeah, great question. So the view corridor parcels will be free of structures, really focusing on keeping those views alive.
Great.
From there, once we have the view corridors and the public land dedication established, we looked at what the development could be inside these parcels. So we have 2 remaining development parcels. On the north, in this darker tan color, we are showing 5 DUs per acre. So that's 82 units on the 16.3 acres. The uses that we're showing as allowed within our preliminary development plan are single family attached residences, duplexes, and townhomes.
One thing I might, go ahead, Bonnie. Nope, go please.
To the south, we have a separate development parcel. So we are showing that as allowing a maximum of 26 units, which is about 2 DUs per acre. And that one allows only single family detached and patio homes. So lower density, much below the 5 DUs per acre that's allowed. Overall, between the two parcels, if you add up the 82 units plus the 26 units across the total acreage, we're about 3.6 DUs per acre.
Just wanted to stop for a moment because we're throwing a lot of information at folks. A few more participants has joined us, so thank you very much for joining us. Just so you all know, we're walking through a presentation about what we call Parcel B here, adjacent to your neighborhood. Majority of the folks that are in attendance are from the Observatory Heights neighborhood, just to the south or south of Bradburn here. So we're showing both of the parcels, the north side of Bradburn and the south side of Bradburn. One thing that I'll show on this graph that Bonnie mentioned, just for context, is the neighborhood's just to the immediate west of the northern part of Bradburn of our site. That's an R3.5 or RA zone district. So that has that comp plan designation. And then the apartments, which are just to the north of us, are an R18. As you all know, we went through a process. We are R5, but I think what Bonnie said at the end is such an important part and something that we want to reiterate again. Again, our dwelling units that we will meet, the dwelling units per acre, will be at 3.6. So we want to reflect what is actually that we're touching the single family homes. As you recall, and certainly don't want to go back through that whole discussion, but the reason we made that request for a different comp plan designation was actually to have more flexibility, more sustainable, smaller lots. And to get out of a lot minimum size, we had to go to R5. So just for perspective, to really show how we're blending in with our neighbors, we are completely cognizant, because you all did a terrific job of saying that we need to reflect your density. And we are showing you here that we are, in fact, reflecting the density that you have in your existing neighborhoods. So sorry, Bonnie, go right ahead.
Thanks, great points. So like I said, the preliminary development plan is in process with the city. At the same time, we are working on a more refined neighborhood plan. We submitted a pre-app for this yesterday. So again, adding on to what Marcus said, we looked at our context. So we have slightly higher single family to the west, lower single family to the south, and then lower density multifamily to the north. So we wanted to focus on putting a little bit more density on the north side and less density on the south side. We then added in the 3 acres of public land dedication to the north, the 3 acres of view corridor to the south, and the 3.7 acres of public land dedication to the south as well. From there, we looked at locations for additional private parks. So you can see those in these light blue asterisks here. So public land dedication is public parks owned and maintained by the city. The city will work with the public to design those spaces. The private parks are likely to be owned by HOA or something similar. Just focusing on this north parcel right now, the south parcel is for future development. We don't have specific plans for that right now, but just focusing on the north parcel, we're looking at over 45% of this 16.29 acres is either parks, open space, or public land dedication. And then going in from there, we wanted to look at our perimeter and what our setbacks would be. So wanted to focus on creating transitions to the adjacent neighborhoods. So on our west side, we're showing a minimum 30-foot landscape buffer. So that's going from our western property line. The closest building will be 35 feet from that property line. On the north, we have a 25-foot buffer. On the north along the apartments, we have a 20-foot buffer. And then there's a 20-foot buffer from Bradburn. So the right-of-way of Bradburn to the closest house is 20 feet.
I think one thing I'd clarify that on Bonnie, particularly on the west, is I think of some of the single family neighborhoods that are there. That is from our property line to our structure. So what you focus on a lot of times in that transition is the structure to structure setback or buffer that goes on. So that's much more substantial. We're just showing that initial buffer, and we want to be sure and give privacy to the neighbors to our west. The other thing I'll point out, and Bonnie's getting to the site plan here, but just so you're all thinking about that buffer, the other thing we've did is we said specifically we wanted to have a north-south layout of these units, where that's a side of a house instead of a backyard looking into the existing backyards of homes. So we were very cognizant about protecting the privacy for people that live there as our neighbors on the western side of our site, to really protect their existing privacy that they have today.
So it's a great transition to our overall neighborhood plan. So this north parcel proposes 82 duplex units. So that's 41 buildings. Each of these yellow boxes shows a lot. So for example, on this little pot of homes, we would have 2 buildings, each with 2 units on the north, and 2 buildings, each with 2 units on the south. The overall density is the 5 DUs per acre, and these homes will have a maximum height of 35 feet. Looking at parking, we're averaging about 3.3 spaces per unit, and that includes just garages. Each unit will have a 2-car garage. Driveways, about half of the units have full driveways for guest parking, and then we have about 30 surface spaces as well. So 3.3 spaces per unit. That does not include on-street parking along our north-south street or along Bradburn. So additional guest spaces will be provided as well.
2 things here, Bonnie. Maybe one of the questions I saw pop up, just to take care of it because it makes sense here. Are these townhome units, or what are the units that we are showing here?
So these are duplex units, and in just a couple of slides, we'll have examples of what those elevations will look like. But it's essentially 2 units side by side within one building. So no more than 2 units are attached to each other in this proposed plan.
Great. And then maybe one more, because it makes sense in this view, the north-south roadway connection that we're showing going through the site there. Obviously, you have to have 2 access points in any development for safety, right? So I think one of the concerns that we looked at is not really a looping, if you will, back to Bradburn, but actually making that a true connection. Is that fair to have that kind of 2 access points to the neighborhood?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we need them for access, for fire safety, emergency vehicles, things like that. But also provides people a couple different options to get into the site so that they're not filling one street more than another.
Great.
This also ties into the grading of the site. So when we looked at this site plan, we looked at the existing topography in great detail. So here you can see 2 site sections. So this top one, number 1, which is located on the eastern third of the site, cuts through Bradburn and goes down into the site. So on the right side of the screen, you have Bradburn Drive. So that exists where it does today. We'll be expanding it slightly, but it's in its correct location, its correct elevation. From there, the site drops down to work with that grade. So each of these homes is approximately that 35-foot max elevation, and they're really tucked down into the site instead of placing the homes along Bradburn and further blocking those views. So tried to tuck the homes, terrace the homes through the site using that topography as much as we could. This continues as you go west along Bradburn as well. So the bottom section, which is located generally in the middle of the site, is located here. So again, Bradburn on the right, the site drops down, and here's again that approximately 35-foot home tucked down into the site.
And one thing, just to give everybody a preview, we will talk briefly about the stormwater and so forth. You look at the slope. I mean, one thing I'd like to point out for Observatory Heights, this is terrific news, right? This cross-section, the site section that you're looking at really shows how this change of grade really helps and protects the view corridor. So if you think of that PLD and the view corridor section that we've shown a number of times, and then you see how far down these homes are set. You know, on this image, we're showing that that home is probably 10 to 12 foot from level of grade, from level of Bradburn. We think that's really a terrific example of working with the neighborhood to provide and protect those views and still building to code. We'll talk about how we also are, of course, taking all that stormwater and actually providing that. I know some neighbors there to the north have had some flooding issues. We've talked to a number of them. A number of you have made that comment. So we'll talk about that as well. I do want to just say we've had 5 or 6 new attendees join us in the last 5 minutes. We are just going through an overall presentation here of our site plan, particularly the north side of Bradburn. I will say we have a very manageable number of participants. I think we have 20-ish or 20 or more. So if you all can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens to write us, I've gotten one or two, but write us additional questions. And then I will say, I think we have the ability, because it's a smaller crowd, where we can actually call on people. At the end of the presentation, I may be able to call on a couple people to promote you, to have you go ahead and ask your question verbally. So you might think of that as well. So sorry, Bonnie, go right ahead.
Perfect, thank you. So overall summary, we talked about the north parcel quite a bit. Wanted to focus on the southern parcel in just a little bit of detail. As it says here, future development, we don't have any development plans for this parcel right now, so we don't have specific layouts like we do for the north to share with you, but wanted to reiterate some of the key points that are outlined in our preliminary development plan for this parcel. So you can see, again, this view corridor and the public land dedication really start using up a bunch of that land. We're left with this kind of triangle piece along Bradburn Drive, and we've committed to a maximum of 26 homes on that parcel, and that's a density of 2 dwelling units per acre. We've committed that those will be single-family detached homes, and they will also have that maximum 35-foot height.
So Bonnie's letting me share all the tremendous points here, just reinforce them. We were so excited to share this because I think all of our neighbors, again, here at Observatory Heights, really south of Bradburn, we do not have development plans right now at all for B2, for the parcel most adjacent to all of you. When we do, we will come back and go through this same process, go through a site plan, have you meet the builder, kind of go through, talk about architecture and all of that. But the thing we wanted to show you, which is so, what all of you asked us to do at City Council, was actually prove up that what we were saying is what we're going to do. We are only doing a maximum of 26 homes here. And you can see that it's just challenging even to get the roadway access into this site. Most importantly, the city wanted to really protect that Lowell buffer there. As you can see from 84th to your neighborhood, there is not one new home being built along Lowell. You're not building any homes there. That is the right place for PLD and the view corridor. So we're really moving that back away from that to protect the transportation network, to honor that, and really work with all of you. So no exact timing at all. We're not working on a proposal. And when we do, we'll come back to Observatory Heights to walk through the B2 parcel.
It's a great transition to our last site plan slide. We want to talk a little bit about evolution and what has changed in this site plan. So you probably haven't seen the site plan on the left. This is a very initial concept when we started looking at this parcel. And we wanted to walk through some of the changes that we've made after hearing from all of you this past year or so. So as Marcus said, one of those key pieces is preserving Lowell Boulevard. We do not have any homes proposed along Lowell Boulevard in our revised concept, whereas we had in the past quite a few backing to Lowell. We also worked with city staff extensively trying to figure out public land dedication, these view corridors, how do we preserve the views that exist today as much as we can. So you see a lot bigger and more public land dedication in the plan on the right. Another big change is our western buffer. We wanted to make sure we were sensitive to the existing homes to the west of us, so we increased that buffer on our west side to the 35 feet to allow that space to transition. We also have reduced the overall density on the southern parcel, again, just those 26 homes compared to the plan that you see here today. And then finally, the big piece is just a reduction in homes. We're proposing about half the number of homes that we had originally contemplated. So really focusing on creating duplex homes that are more clustered so that we can create these bigger public land dedications, these bigger view corridor spaces, and be more sensitive to our buffers and our transitions to our neighbors.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things really just to complement the neighborhood. I mean, you have been so clear about some of these desires and about the overall density. This was something that you articulated very well, worked with the city. The city has been a terrific partner, honestly, in honoring these existing densities, kind of transitioning appropriately and really protecting that Lowell corridor with those remarkable views that you all know so incredibly well. So hopefully this is a really good reflection. We think the southern side is, you know, just terrific news. We think the northern side is as well, showing that density and that connection. But that's the kind of things, I mean, even in a Q&A, you can certainly give me a comment if you think this is more reflective of what you wanted to see, or if you have any suggestions on as we lay it out, either the north or south side, we certainly would be more than willing to take and listen to those comments as well.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, because we are showing a layout for this south piece, this is just showing an idea of how those 26 homes might fit within that parcel. We need to work through access, we need to work through topography. So this is a good reflection of what that might look like. But again, we don't have any specific development plans for that parcel. And we'll certainly meet with all of you when we do have more information on that. I believe here we're going to transition to Todd.
Great. Yes, Todd, sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Bonnie, if I can get the remote from you. There we go. Hopefully you can all see my remote. So a couple of things that I wanted to just touch on tonight was the traffic, detention, and water. And let me start with the detention first. Again, this project really improves drainage conditions that are out there today. Currently, everything runs off of these parcels and into the adjacent neighborhoods or into the streets to the north, and does cause some flooding problems. So what this project will do is actually mitigate not only the existing drainage conditions, but of course the proposed development that we have here. So we do have detention and water quality elements that are up along 84th. They will again reduce the amount of flow coming off this property, also treat that water that's coming off. We also have a swale that will probably run up along this western edge here. We're just working through some final details now, but that water will be collected here rather than running back off into the residence to the west, and that will be directed back to the north. So we think, again, this project really brings a lot of opportunities as far as storm drainage goes to help mitigate some of those issues that are out there today. From a traffic perspective, we've talked about a couple things here, and you've seen the previous layouts, and you've seen that reduction. And so from the comprehensive plan meetings that we had at the city to the previous concepts that we have about a 35% reduction in traffic from what we were even telling you before in the concept submittals or the comprehensive plan submittals. And so this plan, again, is only improving upon those projections that we had given you before. And actually in this specific area, the Lowell and Bradburn intersection operates at a level A and B, so is 84th. And so we're only improving that situation again from the reduction in traffic that will probably be projected off of what we were anticipated to do in this area. Some of the improvements, again, that I really think this project brings to the overall neighborhood is safety. Right now you have segmented sidewalks that are out there. You don't have proper connections. There are no bike lanes on a lot of these roadways. And so Lowell will provide that widening, provide those safety improvements along Lowell and as we get to the north and along this edge here. And it'll provide those sidewalk connections up and down Lowell so that you're not walking on the edge of the asphalt. Same for the bikers. And along Bradburn, same thing. It was only a 2-lane roadway. And now we will have, as you saw in those cross sections, not only the travel lanes, but sidewalks on both sides, tree lined on both sides, and also those bike lanes through this area. So again, safety improvements will really be paramount in some of these improvements that we are putting together. So traffic, again, we think is we're improving upon that situation even from what we had talked about before. One of the other elements that had been mentioned is just, is there anything that's are we gonna ever access this roadway to the south, LaPlace here, or are we gonna change the one-way situation that's here? We worked very closely with the city. The city has not told us that they want to change anything. They currently feel that this is operating. And we hope that you feel that same way. And so we're not proposing any changes. And I think the biggest thing that we can do now is make sure that we educate any new residents that move into this area about the traffic patterns that are in this area, and making sure that there's not cut through. And if there are traffic improvements or physical improvements that can be put in place here to actually help the situation from cut throughs or things like that, those are things that we definitely work with the city on as we go through our process here. So there's a couple questions that did come up on that one, but again, no access onto that roadway. Our access point is really coming back off to the a little bit to the east of this intersection, and then also to the north on 84th. And we really project that, yes, there will be traffic coming back down through Bradburn, but there's also traffic that's getting over to 84th and also to Lowell to travel those corridors back out to 36 and to the other major areas.
Todd, if I may, just one quick clarification there. The one way that you were asked about, can you show that again? That question's already popped up a couple of times in our Q&A format.
Yeah, so there's a one-way situation. It's actually going both ways here. So on the south, it goes in an opposite direction. It's a very unique roadway here, and it's been signed. But again, if there's physical improvements that may help this or additional improvements here, we would work very closely with the city on any impacts that our project would have to this particular area.
Great.
One other or last item I will cover tonight is just the water. There's been some discussion there. And again, what this project has done is from before it was zoned 3.5, single family detached 3.5. That really dictates a lot size of 6,000, 7,000 square foot. And when you think about lot sizes that large, you're getting into a situation where about 50–60% of that lot is actually open space. So it's, and a lot of times what you see on these larger suburban lots is you see them planted with sod and so forth, which is one of the largest consumers of water that you would all experience probably from your water bills is the summertime is always the time where you're going to consume the most water. So in this particular case, again, with the zoning that we have and that we put in place, these are duplex lots. They actually cut the square footage, we believe, will probably get down into an area that's about 50% of what a traditional single family detached lot would be. So just from that perspective, we think we'd be cutting water consumption down. And then also when you think about these spaces that these homes will have, a lot of times in a little more of an urban setting, taking it from a suburban where you do have larger green areas, you're getting into patio areas, you're getting into side yards that are rock mulch. So then there's no watering that occurs with those other than any landscaping with bushes and shrubs and so forth that you might have there. And so from that perspective, again, we feel that the uses that we have on this property, especially in B1 here, will actually help with water consumption within the overall city. This project was actually budgeted for about 2,400 units over 10 years ago. And we have worked closely with the city again on the side of it, and we worked with them on the budgets, and we think we will actually be lower than the projections that they had. Even if we hit the maximum density of 2,350 in our PDP, we still feel like we're going to be below what the budget is. And a lot of those things, again, are contributed to lot size and not using as much sod and using native landscape materials. That's also what you'll probably see in a lot of the open space areas that we do have, is that it's not all sod like you may have seen in some of the other areas of Westminster. And this was a trend that they had about 20 years ago. So there are a lot better ways to landscape. And then we also, the other big consumer of water, of course, is the home. And these homes will be a lot more efficient than homes even built 5 years ago. So we think those are large players in how we will actually not only meet the budget for this area the city had allocated or had budgeted, but we'll probably come under that. And we feel that there could be some great savings that we can accomplish in working with the city.
Great.
Okay.
Great, Todd. I'll just give you a heads up. It's good to be popular, and you are very popular in the question and answer format. So be ready to come back. There's a few specific Q&A, just particularly on traffic and some of the connection points. So we'll go through that when we get to the Q&A format. Thank you all. You are sending in Q&A at the bottom of the screen. We're tracking those. We will go through them and get through as many as we can. If we transition, I think we're going to the next slide. Is that right? This to introduce Paul Brady, who is our project architect. Paul is going to walk through some conceptual architecture, particularly or specifically, I should say, for the northern side of Bradburn.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Paul Brady. I'm the architect working to organize the architecture for the development team. My role is that of overall coordination first. I'm not necessarily designing the homes. What I'm doing is kind of providing that oversight and an additional set of eyes to review these homes to make sure they're high quality, they meet the goals of the community, and are just a really strong addition. Like Marcus said, this shows the homes or types of homes that would be proposed for the north parcel, which is B1. These photos are representational. They're not exactly what's going to be there, but they're a similar style and shape. Specifically, probably more so the top two images. Uplands as a whole is a traditional mixed-use neighborhood. What that means is more traditional leaning architecture, front porches, alley-loaded garages, and just not modern homes like Midtown. It's more those styles you see on the top. Duplexes were the choice picked for this, or contemplated for this parcel, because again of those transitions between the multifamily to the north and the single family to the west. There's no stacked occupancy. One home is on the left, the other is on the right in these images. As far as average size, we expect these to be between 1,500 and 1,900 square feet. And as far as height, 2 stories. These images all have pretty substantial roofs, and I think that's the intention here with those farmhouse or Colorado traditional styles. And as it's measured by the city, these would all be at or below 30 feet in height. Those are really kind of the concepts of the architecture as it stands right now. With that, I think it's next slide.
Great, thanks, Paul. I think this is just meant to be a brief update. So I just want to kind of say to everybody, that's really what we have tonight on specifically parcel B. Again, we think this is all brand new information. We want to reflect on that and really spend more time in the Q&A. Right now, we're at 6:05, 6:06, so we've spent about 35 minutes. I'm just going to finish up the presentation and then we'll transition to Q&A. There's some great comments and questions coming in, so we'll get to those. Just to make sure why this makes sense, why we are doing this PDP, Preliminary Development Plan collaboration. We said in our community meeting about a month and a half ago that the thing we wanted to focus on now was small listening sessions, reflective of the pandemic, understanding that we all can't be together, and trying to find ways to facilitate safe and useful and meaningful discussions with all of you. So in no way are we trying to exclude anybody. Anybody who registered is here, but we want to focus on specific neighborhoods. We want to hear Observatory Heights questions, and we will work with each of the adjoining neighborhood associations and neighborhoods that are there. We'll work with Shaw Heights. We'll do all of this same format. So we wanted to say that. So this is our idea of collaborating in smaller groups. Again, we'll come back to all of you again on the south side of Bradburn. Next slide, please. From here, what we hope to do is actually then transition to some community charrettes that are more project-wide, if you will, that focus maybe on the entire Lowell and Bradburn corridor, to really go through that discussion and do it in a way where we can socially distance when we can socially distance outside, and show you this. This actually gives an example on the two left-hand screens of ways we can do this virtually. We are doing that all the time now, where you can log on whenever you want and make comments, look at the boards, flip the pages, and actually look at a model of this and give specific questions. We'll also try to do one if we can gather in person. So that's what we're looking forward to in the next couple of months as we continue small group meetings with other neighborhoods. Next slide, please. I think this shows a few of those other things in those community-wide charrettes, right? What we want to focus on is those parks and open space. Everybody wants to talk about, great, you are showing parks, but what's in them? How are they actually neighborhood amenities? We want you to tell us that as well. We want them to be your neighborhood amenities, things there. We really want to focus on this infrastructure. We're going to get a lot of questions about traffic. Really, how are we building that out? How are we actually improving by adding trips? How do you improve the traffic flow? And then also this idea of an uplands community character. Somebody made the comment last time that you as neighbors know your neighborhoods better than we ever could. We couldn't agree more. And we want to learn that. We want to see how we can augment, if you will, enhance the neighborhood and really add to that character, that rich character that's already there. So those are some of the things that we'll take comments on as well in those community charrettes. Next slide. I think that does it. I think that really gets us through the presentation. Again, here's just a brief reminder. If you could really look at the Q&A. If we get enough time here, we're at 6:09, so I'm going to get rocking on the questions that we have written. We will do written first. If you see in the middle, there's a raise hand function. If we get to that, I'll try to have you push that and call on a few folks. If you could please limit your question to observatory heights, so it's about what we're actually discussing tonight, questions about that. And again, so I'm going to go right to the Q&A. I'm going to read the questions. I'm not hiding any questions, anything that you submitted. We are happy to address. I will try my best to try to get people on our team to address these, but if anybody wants to just say, hey, that's my question and step up, that would be terrific. So I think, Bonnie, we're gonna start with a few of these that are pretty quick answer. There's some questions here that I moved over to the answered section so we could run through these, but we're gonna start with one that came in before the meeting in an email. And it's one we haven't at all touched on, but how will rodent, pest, and animal control be managed during construction? So this is looking forward. I'm sure we'd like to talk about construction, but how do you manage the animal control during that?
I'm actually going to have Chad answer that question. I know enough to be curious about building things.
Yeah, and Marcus, on a lot of these questions, I actually wrote some written responses that hopefully will answer some of those questions that are in the answered column. So I typed an answer there that just that, you know, during construction, there's industry standard ways of dealing with these sorts of issues. And if there were a specific issue that came up, rats running crazy, I guess we would deal with it on a case-by-case basis. But we hope to keep an open line of communication with the neighborhood during construction for any types of issues. So I think as you move down those questions, you'll see a lot of those were preliminarily answered just as easy ones that I picked off that I thought I could answer, Marcus. And then if you want to focus on the open ones, it might be better use of everything.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And Chad, just so everybody can understand the functionality of that. So when we answer a question in writing, you are now able to see the answer. So just so you know, that's why Chad did that. So I'm sorry, Chad, thanks for pointing that out. So we have 10 questions that we've kind of given a preliminary answer to in writing for all of you. So you can go to the questions and see answered, and you'll see the answers there that walks through them. So I'm going to do just as was suggested. I'm going to go to the open questions, and I'm going to start with those, and then we'll come back to it. So the first question is, what plans does the developer have to work with the city for traffic and safety concerns on Bradburn? So Todd, maybe talk about what plans we do have, but maybe more appropriately and accurately, what plans we have had in working with the city.
Yeah, we have, as part of our PDP process, and even as part of our previous comprehensive plan discussion amendments, we have been working with the city on what are the issues out there. And it's always great to have these meetings so that we understand what your issues are, not just from what the city may articulate back to us. And so we have had discussions about Bradburn and this entire area and how that traffic pattern has changed over time. Again, we will work with them moving forward on just seeing if any changes to that pattern will be made, because that would influence how we distribute traffic from our site. Currently, our patterns are distributed off of 84th. There's Bradburn traffic from that access point that we were showing that will get back to Lowell. And then, of course, there's the traffic that will traverse through the existing residents along Bradburn there as well. And so those distributions have been studied with the city. We work close with them on taking, is it 10%, is it 20%, is it 50% of traffic that actually is projected to go that way. And if that does then cause problems in that the road's not wide enough, or there's additional improvements need to be made, or as we talked about before, maybe there needs to be more physical improvements to protect this one-way situation and this potential cut through that's happening. And I'm not downplaying that it probably doesn't happen, and that's what has been there before. But will there be an increase of that, and are there other measures that need to be taken now because of that? And so again, those are all things that we're working closely with the city as we start to push our plans a little further into the process. Right now, we're at a higher level, and once we get into site specifics, which will come very quickly with the PDP that we just submitted, then those are things that we will definitely get into more discussions on it. And again, we've had this discussion with the city on the place and that one-way situation, and also on Bradburn. And they have told us that, we've looked at additional policing. We've also looked at additional signage. And are there other things that we may need to do there? And those will be further investigated.
Terrific. Great. The next question, I'm going to skip the next one on the collective and come back to that. There's a couple of them all grouped together. So this one, I think, Bonnie, is for you. What will the setback from the road be on the south side of Bradburn? So that transition to the south parcel that we don't have a site plan for, what do you anticipate the buffer being to Bradburn?
Again, we haven't figured out the development plans for that parcel yet. I imagine it would be something similar to the 20 feet we're showing on the north, but still need to work through those details.
Great. I'm just going to skip to this next one. It was, how do you prevent people from driving into Laplace Court? Todd, you have brought that up. We've seen this question asked in a lot of different ways. I think one thing I want to say overall to the neighborhood, and understanding that you do have some very interesting road network and street network and the one-ways, all of those things. Our job, and really more importantly, even the city's job in working with the developer, is to respect that pattern, to work with that pattern. We're not planning to change your network at all, right? That's not within our purview. It's not anything we're suggesting, so we want to respect that. But I think, Todd, maybe just a brief, we're not preventing people, or are we preventing people from driving into Laplace Court?
Because of the one-way situation that is there today, they can only go, of course, certain directions on both segments or both ends of this, on the north and the south. So we're not proposing on any changes to what is there today. I think, if you think about the traffic mitigation measures, you go through signage to signage work, maybe signage isn't cutting it, right? And then there has to be maybe physical improvements. Do we need to put up some islands at Bradburn in this entrance to help direct the traffic so it is only a one-way and it's not something that people will be able to easily cut through on? So those are all things that we work with the city on. And the piece to the south is getting a little further off the area, but those are still things that the city and us would work on to make sure that this still functions properly and we're not causing major problems for this area. But physical improvements are typically the next step after signage, and the signage is what's out there today. And those are things that can still be put in place as a next mitigation measure pretty easily.
Great. So follow up on traffic, we're just going to stay where it's at. And I think, folks, these are great questions, so we want to walk through it. So what are the plans to manage traffic onto Lowell from Bradburn? So if you think about the hill that's already on Lowell, the comment is how it's so hazardous already pulling onto it from Bradburn. So the question is, with this increase in traffic, people will be more inclined to make dangerous pullouts just to get out of the neighborhood. I'm going to start and say that I think maybe the question, it implies that this is going to create a more dangerous situation. So Todd, first will you address that? And actually, how can you make this safer? What improvements are you making to Bradburn and Lowell to try to improve that, not just add traffic trips to that?
There's a couple things that'll occur with the project, and it's a great point. This is exactly what we look at when we start putting in mitigation measures on projects. So the first thing, and this question refers to site distance. So if I'm pulling up the Bradburn and Lowell intersection and I can't quite see the cars coming over the hill to the south, and I start pulling out in front of them, that we're going to have some problems there, right? So a couple things that we would be doing as part of our initial design analysis and further investigations with the city is making sure that that site distance works. And, you know, if it was designed 50 some years ago, which it was, I'm sure that those site distances don't quite work with the speed limits that are out there. And so there may be mitigation that is put in place to slow speeds, but that's not always the answer. And so what we're trying to do a lot of times is just fix the problem. So let's make sure that we get the vertical curve that's out there. Maybe we need to modify that vertical curve and provide more site distance. So that's one thing. And then you'll get a situation where, okay, now we're not pulling out. We can easily see cars. Additionally, it's a 2-lane roadway for these. And now we're going to have bike lanes. So we're going to have a little more room for visibility as well when we get to this intersection. So those are all things that we'll start working on, again, in our traffic toolbox to make sure, because that, again, is our most important element of what we do, is making sure safety is number one. And then we work through, what can come out of that toolbox to improve safety there. And again, the city is very cognizant of these types of issues. They will make sure that we're meeting standards, and we, of course, will meet or exceed those standards as well when they come to safety. So those are really going to help. Additionally, even the sidewalks that are out there, we're going to create more of an area of visibility for anybody that could be in this area to cut down on those types of problems.
That's a great answer, Todd. I may ask a question.
Marcus,
Yeah,
I would just
go ahead,
add, sorry, one clarification point. I would add, the inclination of a dangerous left turn from Bradburn to Lowell or right turn. We're providing another solution by accessing up to 84th, and then they'll have access to the signalized intersection. So it's probably inherently safer or more natural to go up to 84th now with this new connection from parcel B1 to the signalized intersection and in a safer situation. So just to bolster Todd's statement earlier, we're looking at this from a holistic perspective. There's a lot of things that go into play with the overall traffic movements, and some new options that don't exist today will be created. So not to say it's going to leave everything as is, but just another point.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Chad. And if I can ask Bonnie or Jasper, would you actually go to our slideshow or that shows parcel A and B, or the north and south, that kind of shows this so people can understand it as we look at it. The other thing, I just want to make kind of a very clear comment about this, because I think it's a really good question that was asked, particularly about that Bradburn to Lowell connection, whether it's a left to go north or right to go south. I think the thing that really should be acknowledged here is also what the city did in protecting the PLD to the north and that view corridor. That very idea of that view corridor is also a pedestrian safety. It is amazing views. I certainly understand that view corridor, but it's also protect that traffic shed there and really open that up. I think we were also talking about how now you'll be able to go through this site. Our traffic will go through there to 84th to go to the light at 84th and Lowell. So that may make actually for a safer production or safer neighborhood as well. I will say the next was a follow-up from the same questioner. The statement, or the question was, the statement on our behalf that is causing a reduction in traffic makes no sense. I think I can answer that, Todd, unless you want to add on. What we were suggesting, what Todd was suggesting, is that we have to do initial projections on this site, looking at the density overall, what's allowed. And as you know, we're allowed up to 5 dwelling units per acre on this site. We're only going to achieve about 3.6. So based on those initial projections, we are actually reducing those numbers from where we started. So in no way are we saying this is actually going to reduce all traffic counts. We were saying from our initial productions, it'll be a reduction in those numbers. So I think that clarifies it, but Todd, if there's anything to add on, go right ahead.
No, that's exactly the point that we were talking about. The other thing is that, you know, single family detached compared to single family attached paired in this particular case, there's actually a two trips per unit reduction just in the type of use that we have here as well. So not only do we change the use, not only do we lower the numbers, you know, those two are really contributing to the lowering of the projected traffic that we had, and really just trying to be transparent. We had made statements at the comprehensive plan amendment meeting on our projections, and these projections are now lower than that. So again, we're just improving that situation from what we had before. That was that we were trying to make there. Thank you.
That's great.
And Marcus, this is Jeff. If you can hear me,
Yes,
the only
you're fine.
on traffic, and hopefully we can move on from that because I know everybody is concerned about traffic, and rightly so. The only thing I was going to add is that I hope everybody understands how this works for us. We work with independent traffic engineers, which Todd directs, and they work directly with the traffic professionals of the city. It's not like we as a development team can change traffic standards or anything they tell us to do. And so it's largely a third-party driven process. And if you have specific issues that you'd like to see addressed in the traffic realm on this piece, reach out to the city directly and their traffic professionals, and they can help you. The other thing I was going to say about just in terms of volume, yes, this is a reduction from where we were, from what we're allowed to do from a comprehensive plan perspective. Where we really wanted to be is a net no change from what these folks would have seen in parcel B, the way it was before we showed up, R3.5. And I think Bonnie pointed out that 108 units as contemplated between B1 and B2 were right there. And so the traffic that was going to be here, no matter what it was, under the comp plan and under the traffic engineering, that's what we're matching. Along with the new north-south connection, we're not saying that we're going to make traffic better from where it is today, but that is one of the things that we're trying to use to mitigate. That's the only thing I wanted to add, Marcus, is those 2 quick points. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Next comment here. It's comment and then a question at the end. I'll read it. I'm very happy with what I'm seeing in the plan you are showing thus far. My concern is this. Will these homes be restricted to owner occupied, or will you have them bought up or filled up as rental properties filled with occupants that perhaps don't have community connections? So whoever wants to address that, maybe Chad?
Go ahead, Jeff. I'll let you take that one.
Sure. I was just going to say, I mean, thank you for the comment that you like the way the direction that is going on the plan. I would just say this as the developer, and I've been around longer than most of my other teammates on this, but we've all been around a long time on this project. It's painful to go from 160 units from our first plan that you saw there to 150 units aligned by comp plan to 108. And so one of the things that feels good when we do that is to feel a little, hey, thank you for listening to our comments. And so thank you for making that comment. The thing I would add is that I don't philosophically agree that renters necessarily are going to have no community connections, or they're going to be any less valued neighbors for you. You know, rental housing has changed quite a bit. And renters occupy large single-family homes, duplexes, pairs, townhomes, all kinds of missing middle types. That being said, this parcel is not contemplated to include rental on that level, on a comprehensive level. If someone buys a home and ends up moving and rents their home, we can't stop that. That's not what this neighborhood is designed for. I hope that's clear enough, Marcus.
That's great. Good. Next question was, people are naturally going to cut through, right? So just looking at the map, the most direct route through to your parcel is LaPlace. So that one's coming up again. Actually, the comment is really good here. It's already used as a cut through, and people drive 40 plus miles an hour up that hill. More houses will be added, right? So we need to either do something, some physical obstructions or a vastly improved amount of police traffic coverage. So I think that's more of a comment, Todd, and I think more for us to reflect on. I think that's something that we continue with this, to share with the city. To the question, we agree with you, we understand it, and we will focus on that roadway connection. We are agreeing, and I think we're going to make that a specific discussion with the city. The follow-up then from the same questioner was, the revised site plan for parcel B looks greatly improved, and we appreciate that, but we remain concerned about the impact on the place. Anything on that, Todd, or just that it's noted because it's a good comment?
No, we agree with the comments. Those are all things that we're going to be working with the city on as, again, we get into more detail on this plan. I agree.
Great. Okay, great. So here's a quick follow-up. I've had a couple of questions, but for some reason my Q&A keeps rolling on me. So can we estimate the cost of the purchase price of the duplexes that we are showing on the north side of Bradburn? That might be one where nobody wants to answer quite yet, but go ahead, Jeff.
This in writing in a way, in the sense that it's just too early to know, in terms of those homes being available for sale. I would imagine that is a late 21, maybe 2022 type of time frame. I hope that helps people with a time frame. In terms of the amount that those things would sell for, that's largely out of our crystal ball at this point. So I wish I could help you there. I think closer to the point where we'll open this neighborhood, we'll have a better sense of where prices are. But, someone can also take a look around. There are similar paired homes in the area, and take a look at those prices and see, what those things are selling for. That's always a good proxy to go take a look. Hope that helps.
Great. Bonnie, this is a question, or maybe because you'll know the comp plan and the rules on that. What space is allotted or required between the duplexes is required on B1?
Yeah, that's a great question, which doesn't show up in our site plan. So I assume we're talking about kind of the side to side. So between one building side and the other building side, we're showing a 7.5-foot side setback on each lot. So that's 15 feet between each building, which is consistent with the city's single family attached design standards.
Great. Perfect. This is the question that I'll be happy to address up front, because I think it was indicating something that I had said. So the question is, and I'll read it first and then answer. You keep mentioning that you have a great working relationship with the city. I assume that means you are trying to meet the comp plan, but your words imply that the city is supporting this development. Question: can you explain what the process is getting from where you are today to actually building? I'm not sure, so I'm sure others are not. So Bonnie, I'll let you take the second half of that. I just want to say, if that's something that I said, I mean, first of all, I hope that we all have the opportunity to try to have great relationships with the city and with all the neighborhoods. So our attempt here is to try to do the best we can to be as transparent and open. I think one thing, if I indicated something like that about working with the city, is that the city has been very mindful of the comments that they have received from the neighborhood. And I was congratulating the neighbors for doing such a good job. So I hope that we all, in the end of this, have a very good relationship with the neighbors, with all of you who will be our neighbors as well. I'm certainly not in any way implying that the city is supporting this development, and nor would I. So I'm going to say that again. In no way am I implying that the city is supporting this development. The city has a very defined role, and they are honoring that role, and we are going through that process, and we're actually greatly expanding that as well to work with all of you in individual neighborhoods. So Bonnie, I think the transition then, perhaps we go back to that initial slide. There's a lot on there, but can you explain the process from getting where we are today, right, to actually building? Just walk through those city steps, please.
Absolutely. So the left third of the screen, comprehensive plan amendment, that's a process that we went through and completed back in February. That's what gave us the R5 land use designation for each of those parcels. So this middle section is where we are today. The primary piece of that is the preliminary development plan. So that sets kind of that next level of detail, creates a framework for the overall plan. It sets up key street locations, access points, maximum building heights, densities, things like that. So we're currently in the process with the city on that. We just made a resubmittal. The city is reviewing that. It's consistent with what we're showing you today. At that same time, we just yesterday submitted a pre-application request. So that is kind of a simplified site plan, very consistent with what we presented to you all today. The city has an opportunity to review that. We meet with them and they give us their initial comments. Big picture feedback, things that we need to look at as we move this site plan forward. So we'll review those comments, and then we need to prepare what's called a site-specific official development plan. So those are very detailed site development plans. It'll show elevations for what the actual homes will look like. It'll show detailed grading. It'll show a detailed landscape plan, detailed lotting plans. It'll provide all the details of what this parcel is going to look like. Following that process, we have some more legal processes to go through, such as creating a final plat to create the saleable parcels. At that same time, we do construction documents, so engineering plans to work through, again, that next level of detail on grading, infrastructure, things like that. And then once we get through all those processes, we can start the actual construction. So that's just focusing on this North B parcel, but we'll have to go through that same process for each of the different neighborhoods that we develop.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go, Paul, just to alert you. And if you all don't mind going to the slide that shows the conceptual architectural renderings. So the comment I think here is that, first of all, the new designs look a lot better than what we're showing on Facebook, excuse me. So I think one thing we should do is definitely change the images, whatever images we have on Facebook. I think the other question, there was a few specifics. Actually, the comment that the bottom right image was the most attractive of those. So Paul, is it just those top two, or what other images or what other architecture will be utilized?
Yeah, there's going to be many different plans and elevations developed for this parcel. Some of those will reflect each of the images shown on the screen, including the bottom right image. The comment previously was just that the top two, maybe were most closely related to the roof requirements of the city of Westminster.
Great. A quick transition. I think it's important because we've got a number of follow-up questions.
Sorry, Marcus, just want to interject one thing on architecture. I think it's important for everybody to understand. When we put an image on Facebook or our website, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the neighborhood that's going to be next to you. That could be a neighborhood half a mile away. There's a very large site. And, we're 3/4 of a mile away from the 86th and Federal, 88th and Federal-ish. As the crow flies, maybe less. But I guess my point is that this is, when you look at images, you got to remember this is a very large site. It might not be specifically for parcel B, but we will look at Facebook and our website and see if there's anything specific to parcel B that we need to update.
Great. Specific question, a quick answer. Who is the builder you are selling to, that are the conceptual designs that we are seeing?
I can take that one. This is a pre-application that is in the e-tracking system in the city. So this is, largely public information. These images you see, these are actually a built product from KB Home. KB Home is a Los Angeles-based builder. They're a national builder, building a heck of a lot of markets, and they're publicly traded. They're very large. They've been building in Denver for decades. And what they've been focused on for about the last 15 years, almost exclusively, not really exclusively in the suburbs, but in Stapleton and Lowry, has been this type of product. So when we started this, we knew that this was going to be a transitional neighborhood between single family and attached. We thought that paired homes, which I kind of prefer to duplexes, the word, but they're the same. We thought this was the right typology and form. And so we actually sought after the builder that had built the most duplexes and pairs in a new urbanist format, where the cars enter the back of the home, where it's kind of a porch proud product. And so we interviewed a ton of builders, and that's the builder that actually matched up to this product perfectly. Hope that is a complete answer for you.
Sorry, I was on mute. That's a great answer. Next question, Todd, we're coming back to you. Just a follow-up. So I think we've spent a lot of time at 84th and Lowell, right? And kind of all those intersections. So here's the specific question. There are many accidents at 84th and Lowell now. What will make that better? Why not a signal at Bradburn and Lowell to offset that a little bit?
We would look at that as part of our detailed analysis. So currently our study is showing that it does not need a signal. It operates at a level of service B, which is how we monitor when signals are justified. And you also have to meet certain federal criteria as well there. So we don't want to just put up a signal and then not have it operate, properly throughout all situations that are there. So currently, Bradburn and Lowell does not require a signal. Again, it operates in a level of service B. As we get up towards 84th and Lowell, to the question of the accidents, those are things that we also work with the city on to pull all the accident reports that are out there, then go back to the criteria and do we need to widen the right turn lane? Do we need to create some more sight distance at this intersection? Because 50% of the vehicles that were in an accident were actually coming from this direction and they didn't see the other one. So those are all the things that we would look at as part of the analysis that we would do at that intersection to make sure that things function properly. And of course, like I mentioned before, safety is taken into consideration, not only with the vehicles that are there, but now the pedestrians that we're introducing, plus the cyclists that have their own lanes there as well. All of those things will be looked at now in totality with that accident data to make sure that we're providing a proper intersection.
Terrific. Thank you. So just keeping track of time here for everybody, it's 6:40. I think Game 7 of the Nuggets tipped off a few minutes ago, but that's not driving our time frame here. We're going to stay on till 7 o'clock. We're going to go through it. I still see a handful of questions in the written format, so I'm going to work through those. So I don't know if we're going to get to raising your hands and answering them. So if you have a question, please get it in the Q&A. And if there's time, I'll call on you. So a question that I mentioned very early on that I was skipping over was actually on the Uplands Collective. So I think we have Eric Kornacki here from the Uplands Collective. So the specific question, Eric, you're going to have to tell some folks what the Uplands Collective is, because a lot of people won't have that context. But the specific question is, how long has Uplands committed to funding the collective? Eric, maybe you answer that, or maybe that comes back to one of the Uplands team members, but if you would start, that would be terrific.
Sure, I can maybe have Jeff or someone from the Uplands team answer about the funding issue. I did put a little bit of a response in the written form. The Uplands Community Collective is a nonprofit that was established in partnership with Uplands to really leverage the investment opportunity that this development offers. And so we're looking at ways to address lack of food access for some historic residents and neighbors by growing and cultivating and distributing food from site. We're looking at starting workforce development program that is providing some construction and trades and maintenance and landscaping jobs on this site from the existing surrounding community. And so the collective vision, if you want to go check out our website, it is separate from Uplands, Colorado. You can go to uplandscommunitycollective.org. We're in the process of forming an advisory committee. There's some information on our site. If you are interested, you can submit a form and I will follow up with you. But I think somebody else asked a question about the name of the collective. And really, we felt that the collective was a community-wide effort to develop a place-based economy and to really look at all of the social determinants of health that build on community assets that are already in place and work to fill in some of the gaps. Jeff, or anyone from the Uplands team, do you want to address the funding question?
Sure. Yeah, I'll address the funding. I think the question is, how long will the collective be funded by Uplands? And the truth is that, as long as it takes for the collective to become self-sufficient from a grant, foundation, operating revenue perspective. And good news is that Eric has deep experience in creating these types of community-based co-ops. And he knows pretty much when that tipping point is. We've modeled that, discussed it. So, I guess that from my perspective, as long as it takes, I guess is probably the answer there. And, we've got ambitious goals with the collective. So it's going to be I'm sure, a multi-decade effort. We can't tell you today in what year that'll switch over from being a nonprofit, state-established organization to be a 501c3, able to take tax-deductible gifts, and therefore more easily able to sustain itself with foundations, grants, and other revenues.
Very good. Thanks to both of you. I just want to go through just a few more questions here, just to let everybody know we have now answered, the team has answered 30 questions in writing. So you all as attendees are able to see those answers. So we provided a little more detail, maybe it's a briefer answer, but we wanted to be sure that we had the appropriate team member on our team respond to those. The one that I will just say, I think there's overall some questions that will continue and respectfully should continue to percolate about the traffic. There's a number of questions about Bradburn specifically, and maybe if we could stop the traffic or if there's a way to do that or stop the access there. I think the one thing I just want to say that is really important here is we understand the traffic issues very well. We respect them and we need to hear these comments from all of you. I think what we're trying to do is help find the right solutions that adding some residences to those roadways. We understand that adds traffic trips. Nobody's saying we're not adding traffic trips. What we are saying, and this is certainly said from a traffic engineering standpoint, is we are making improvements to offset that traffic, those trips. So this is an engineering science that you study roadways, and you really look at the way the intersections are rated. Todd mentioned it earlier, it's a letter grade, they're rated. And so we really look at how we're improving those. So you may not realize it, but Bradburn, one of the great challenges there at Bradburn is that it's not finished. It doesn't have sidewalks, it doesn't have a tree lawn, and it's actually really open. It doesn't have any houses that kind of have a presence along that roadway. So there are faster speeds, people coming through there. The topography causes a lot of challenges here. So we hear you. We're not dismissing one of the things that have been suggested here. We want to work through you. Our job is to give the site plan, and then the city says, here's the things that we want you to improve. Here's what we think is necessary, and here's what we've heard from the community. So all of these things we're hearing, this is an iterative process that we will continue to work through these. So we don't have every answer tonight. That's absolutely correct. We will continue to get more clarity on these, but we know the improvements, the sidewalk network, all of those things. So just an overall comment that we're going to continue to work to these to try to get you more complete answers, more specific answers. As the plans develop, you will get more and more specific answers, but that's kind of how the process goes. So I'm looking here, if anybody has anything to add to that, I may just open it up to our team and see if anybody sees a question that they generally wanted to answer that they have not dismissed here. Have I missed any questions that anybody would like to bring up for the team?
Marcus, there's one from Amy that just asks about staying connected in lieu of getting flyers on the doors. And so I guess there's a couple different resources to answer that question. You know, we have a sign up on uplandscolorado.com where you can stay in the loop and you'll get emails regularly. Eric's website on the collective has a similar email sign up for the email blast. And then Marcus, you guys have a better way of keeping in touch the group of contact information that you keep for all the neighbors that will get emails directly if there's an event or things like that, right?
That's right. So I think one thing we tried to do, and somebody made a really good observation here. You look at the map here, the blue area, Observatory Heights area residents. This is who we flyered for the meeting. Okay, so we went with the statistical neighborhood next door that showed Observatory Heights. We really went with that, understanding that there are other adjacent neighborhoods to these parcels, and we will talk with them as well. But we started here. So we would love to do something more than just flyers. We actually flyered this twice. One was completely my mistake because we had a very difficult flyer to read. So this one, so we appreciate that. If we have a slide, and I'm asking Jasper or Bonnie, that has the website that is linked so people could just go to that website or an email address, we would love to hear from all of you. If you registered, we do now have your email, so I can start with that. I see a number of names of folks that didn't necessarily register for tonight's meeting, so we don't necessarily have your contact information. I know it was shared how to log in on Nextdoor and a few other sites. So if you will email info@uplandscolorado.com that you want to be placed on a mailing list, we would really appreciate that. It allows us to be more efficient and frankly more diligent in reaching out to each of you. So thanks very much for doing that. One other quick question I saw here, and this is just kind of a best case scenario, best case, I guess, from a development standpoint. What is the construction expected? When is the construction expected to begin in parcel B? Jeff, do we have any idea what that timeline would look like?
Yes. So I think I mentioned it before when I talked, and I talked too much so people could probably gloss over it. Is I mentioned it'd probably be late 21 until you see something under construction there. It could be into 22. And so that's when we would know prices as well, right? It's closer to the time when they're ready to sell the homes. So that would be the time frame.
Great. Very good. Thank you.
Oh, and while we're talking about a specific question, I thought I'd nab one real quick. I think there was a question about what happens on the south side of Bradburn, parcel B2, in terms of, hey, can we know about the product height and the product type and all that stuff? And I think we printed that, hey, we're not ready for that and we'll bring it to you when we are. I just want to make sure everybody understands from the beginning that we did, and actually, Bonnie, you can flip to that sheet. We did show the maximum height at the same height as B1, 35 feet was the maximum height. So I wanted to make sure I answered that. And it's underneath, as Chad wrote in the written responses, 10 acres total of public land dedication being open space or parks. So I just wanted to clarify that. And it has to be single family detached as opposed to single family attached. So that's what you know about B2 and when it will come your way. You'll know more about the details when we design it, but that's not in our current plans at the moment. Hope that helps. Last thing I thought I would really clarify is someone asked, okay, what happens in the view corridor? And I think that my team could probably answer more eloquently than I can, but let me take a stab. It's dedicated to the city. It is park or open space, period. No structures in it to obscure the view. And that'll be true of any view corridor throughout the project, but in particular this one. So the grove you see down there and all that land, that's really the city's decision, and they'll go through a visioning process with the neighbors and Westminster residents on what that 10 acres total right there along Lowell looks like, including the top, the sunset park, so to speak, on what kind of improvements they'll make there for viewing and parking, et cetera. That's it. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Great. So folks, I actually think we've worked through all the questions. Unless I'm missing something, I've run through them. I think we answered 42 questions. We have provided written data. I'm going to say we are losing a few participants because we're kind of getting towards the end of the meeting. So I'm just going to summarize one or two final items here. And if a question pops up, I'll be happy to deal with it. But I think we'll end that for the Q&A. I just want to say, actually, Bonnie, if you could go back to that slide that was just there. Really for Observatory Heights, and we understand that you are neighbors and drive Lowell and Bradburn and certainly part of Westminster and go through this site. But one thing we wanted to walk through is really this northern site plan that we have. We have submitted this concurrently with this meeting in the last day or two to the city. So we wanted to be completely transparent about that. We want to show these designs, the conceptual architecture, that this is KB Homes that is submitting that, and show the PLD. All of this will get comments back from the city as well. In no way are we saying that this is final or approved or moving forward. We will get comments back from the city and all of the referral agencies. You are a very important referral agency. So we wanted to hear those comments tonight, and you've been great in providing those. I think for clarification, on the south side of B2, as we're all looking at it, we will have a maximum of 26 units. That will be 2 dwelling units per acre. That is entirely reflective of the existing built environment, and something that we wanted to honor as we heard from all of the neighbors there to really try to reflect and transition, if you will, into that existing neighborhood. When we have a site plan, when we have a developer builder that we're working with, we will come back to this format and collaborate with all of you. So I think I'm going to stop there. I don't really see any additional things. I'm going to just say, if there's anybody on our team that makes any final comments, go right ahead, and otherwise I'm going to conclude us. if our team doesn't answer really quickly, you know they're probably done. So I'm just going to say, on behalf of the entire Uplands team, what a pleasure it has been to work with all of you tonight. We will provide a link to this meeting, so anybody, you can share it with your friends, spouse, if they weren't able to watch this. So we'll provide a link so you can watch this. We've recorded the meeting. We'll be happy to go through in more detail, but I really want to say thank you very much for participating in this. Go have a great night, and go Nuggets win Game 7. Thank you all very much. Talk to you later.